Hi everyone, welcome to UCTV, and today is the special day because it's Friday. It is Friday, yes, and I know you all love on Friday, so I wish for you the best weekend and stay safe because the numbers are getting high. So for you, I want to invite you to be part of our campaign by Unity Coalition. Celebrate your orgullo and also wearing that mask to order your t-shirts and also be part of the global mass. Order your t-shirts, celebrate Orgullo and Unity and Diversity t-shirts so you can get only for $20.20. In the meantime, let me remind you, the service community, we love their job and we need your help. Let's continue helping the community. Go to unitycoalition.org and scroll down until you see the Microgiving Fund Coronavirus. That's the title, and select donation. As soon as you donate, everybody will be healthy and everybody will be happy because we want to continue helping that donation. So go to unitycoalition.org and scroll down Microgiving Fund Coronavirus and donate. And also don't forget to share on your social media. Visit our website, unitycoalition.org, and subscribe in the bottom right here for subscribe on YouTube channel. Remember, we are here every time and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 4 p.m. on Facebook Live, and then Instagram and YouTube. So you go and check it out. October is here. October is here. October is here. October 1st to the 15th, go and celebrate Orgullo by Unity Coalition. Miami Hispanic and Indigenous Pride Festival since 2011. That's going to be on October 1st to the 15th. 9 of 1,000 each virtual star, diva boost tour, music, entertainment, performer, more what you love. That's going to be on unitycoalition.org and also Celebrate Orgullo. Don't forget to visit celebrateorgullo.com so you can get more info and check it out with your participations. Monday, next Monday, August 24. Remember, 4 p.m. here on Facebook Live by Unity Coalition. Birthday celebration for Marsha P. Johnson. Coming out and take up space on Monday, August 24, 4 p.m. until reclaim the pier for our ancestors. Pier 46 hosted by Stars. So just remember, that's going to be on Monday, the next Monday, 24, 4 p.m. Facebook Live. For our transgender community, continue helping and continue stay safe. Support, resources, and conversation that you can trust and understand. Apoyos, recursos y conversaciones para toda nuestra comunidad transgénero. Unity Coalition ahora tiene el programa para ti comenzando este septiembre 2 a las 4 de la tarde en el Facebook Live para nuestra comunidad transgénero. Todo aquello que necesitas saber de cómo mantenerte saludable, especialmente en estos tiempos del COVID. El PrEP, el NPrEP y todo lo que tiene que ver con las enfermedades de transmisión sexual lo tenemos aquí en Preparing for a New Life by Unity Coalition. In the meantime, let's go live right now to Colombia, UCTV Colombia and Unity Coalition Colombia right now. We have live giving some biohazard and also the kids with the mask and hand sanitizer by Unity Coalition Colombia. We going live right now to Bogota, Colombia. So let's go ahead and check it out. What's going on in Bogota, Colombia by UCTV Colombia. In the meantime that we are checking, just waiting for you see the picture here. So Unity Coalition Colombia is giving right now, helping that community, the service community, all this LGBT community in Colombia, especially in Bogota. We are helping them. We are giving away food distribution prepared for our community, biohazard kits, so they have hand sanitizer, they have a mask, they have everything they need in order to keep safe, especially in this time of the COVID-19. So you want to get more information, and mi gente de Colombia quieren saber mucha más información, vayan ahora mismo a nuestra página web, Unity Coalition o Coalición Unida, en español, coaliciónunida.org, y denle hasta que encuentren Coalición Unida Colombia para que usted sepa mucha más información de las diferentes organizaciones que se encuentran colaborando en estos momentos para nuestro programa de Unity Coalition Colombia. Vamos a chequear en estos momentos y cheque.
Como se pueden dar cuenta, que estamos organizando la entrega con nuestros colaboradores, Manuel, Luna, y aquí estamos, nuestra donación del día de hoy, los almuerzos, los kits, está el compañero que nos está y todas las personas que nos están colaborando.
3, 2, 1.
Hola, hola, bueno, quiero saludarlos y quiero comentarles que nos encontramos aquí desde el sur de la ciudad, en el barrio de Hermoso, en la localidad de Ciudad Bolívar, haciendo un recorrido y una entrega a nombre de Unity Collection y de
la organización Ahora trabajando por y para. Muchas gracias.
Hay que hacer una labor súper especial y es que vamos a repartir almuerzos y profilácticos a todas las personas de la comunidad, especialmente las mujeres trans trabajadoras.
al finalizar de la jornada.
Lucero Bajo, haciendo nuevamente nuestra donación, compartiendo con todas las personas que de acá.
Trabajando de la mano con Unity Collection y de
La organización Haga sus divas. Y aquí está Luna y Luna. Por supuesto, la última, pero no menos importante. Venezuela.
ahí se pueden dar cuenta, ahí tienen el almuerzo como tal, y también tienen el profiláctico a nombre de la organización y también tienen el tapaboca para que se cuiden, ¿listo? Con gusto.
Si no tenemos ningún problema, si quieres yo tomo la foto.
Go Unity Coalition Colombia! We just want to say congratulations to Unity Coalition Colombia for everything that you've been doing for that community. And as I said, always in the COVID-19 time, it's hard for our people, for our civils. So we want to continue helping the community, no Latinos. Everybody is invited and is welcome to our community. Go and check it out, unitycoalition.org. And also be part of the global story, honey. Order your Unity and Diversity t-shirt for only $20.20 and get the Unity Diversity t-shirts with a mask. So as soon as you get it, wear the mask and put the t-shirt. So send in a picture to Unity Coalition so you can be part of the program, Wear That Mask. For our transgender community, preparing for a healthy life, everything that you want to know about PrEP and PrEP, healthy lifestyles, mental disorders, especially in this time of COVID-19, we all need help. So that's the time so you stay safe and also stay communicating for our transgender community. Not only transgender, gender non-binary and gender non-conforming. Just remember, preparing for a healthy life is starting on September 2nd, 4 p.m. Facebook Live by Unity Coalition. And this is my friend Frenchie. Frenchie already got the Unity and Diversity t-shirts. For only $20.20, get your Unity and Diversity t-shirts, wear it, and as soon as you get it, send in a picture to Unity Coalition so you be part of the people wearing that mask program. And today, Friday, remember UCTV, 4 p.m., Facebook Live, and then Instagram and YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe on our channel on Instagram and follow on YouTube so you don't miss any opportunity and any talk show. And today, Unity Coalition, human trafficking. This is gonna be the UCTV library, honey. So that's the file that we have for you. All these files that we got. So we want to remind that for you, what is human trafficking? You know what it is? It's a heart. Human trafficking can be for somebody that retain your passport for you to do something while you don't want it. So there are so many reasons to be in a human trafficker. Let's go and check it out. This by Unity Coalition a few years. This is the library by Unity Coalition. Enjoy.
Situation, intimate partner violence situations, where that dynamic of that power and control shifts, where you're no longer in control of your own life. There is nothing you can do. And then the threats are also there. If you leave, you're just going to get picked up by law enforcement. They're going to throw you in jail. Your parents are going to be disgraced by you. All right, fine, leave, go. What are you going to do? Who are you going to see? You don't have anything, and you're back to the situation you were originally in before you met this person, and that is a dangerous place to be. So again, like you were saying, it's that psychological aspect that happens coupled with the physical. Now when we're looking at labor trafficking, if you go to Immokalee, if you go to Arcadia, you have so many migrant workers in the fields working, getting your tomatoes. If you go to Publix once had a march all the way from South Florida up to, I think, Tallahassee, where they were protesting these victims who have to work in these plantations and provide. They were victims of human trafficking. And like you were saying similarly before, you come to this country because you're looking for a better opportunity. You're leaving behind a life that wasn't providing anything for you, and you're coming here to start new. Maybe to bring money back home to bring the rest of your family here, or to provide a better life for your whole family. So of course there are other coyotes who can bring you over. And that's the difference between smuggling and trafficking. Smuggling is a business transaction. So you get me over the border and I'm giving you $25,000. You get your money, I leave, boom, we're done. That's not trafficking. Trafficking is a continual process. So you come over here, I'll bring you over the border for $25,000. Well, I don't really have that much money. Okay, well I have a friend in Florida, in a really rural community, and I can get you a job. And you'll work there, and I'll get 10% of your paycheck, or whatever that looks like. And then you get there and you're thinking, wonderful, I'll work this out, I'll be able to provide, and you get there and suddenly everything changes. Now you're being beaten. Now you have 5 minutes to use the restroom after working 12 hours, not being fed, not being given water, and you're being docked every single time. If you're a minute late to work, $100. You dirtied your shirt, it's another $100. And this bill that you have continually increases, and it never, ever goes away. And there are other abuses that can happen as well. So when you're looking at Florida, we're really seeing, in my experience, a lot of runaways. A lot of people who are coming from other countries without their papers, like we discussed earlier. But here in Miami, if you notice, what's becoming something I've heard a lot about are these strip clubs and the streets around here where you're seeing a lot of especially underage people working. And again, it's that vulnerability aspect. I'm leaving behind something that was worse off in the hopes of something better. And someone promises you a great opportunity, and it's not what it seems.
Alina, along the lines of the underage and more specifically LGBT, are there statistics on whether it's a runaway or an abuse situation, somebody that's underage that finds themselves on the streets? What are the statistics of how quickly they are more than likely to end up in one of these horrible, vulnerable situations?
Well, what I was actually mentioning before is that I never really refer to statistics because they tend to be very skewed.
Okay.
I mean, a statistic that I do use is that 40% of our homeless youth actually are LGBTQ, so that's a disproportionate amount. And you mentioned before, talking about what makes them vulnerable to traffickers. So just seeing that degree, that number within youth homelessness, we know that there has to be a high percentage of LGBTQ youth that are being trafficked, but we don't have any numbers really to back that up. I mean, money and energy goes into communities that we see as valuable, and LGBTQ youth have not, traditionally been seen as a valuable community. So I don't know that a lot of effort has really been put into figuring out the numbers for that.
So those numbers are so high, I'm confident that the social services are also readily available for the LGBT community in South Florida. Yes?
No. So, and that's the difficulty with working with LGBTQ youth survivors, because sometimes with other young people who have survived trafficking, they may have communities or families that they can go back to. But for many of these youth, as mentioned before, they ran away specifically because of rejection due to their identities, or they were kicked out of their own homes due to their identities. We don't have a lot of youth-serving shelters that are specific for LGBTQ needs, and that specific population, 18 to 24. A lot of young males in that age range cannot go to adult shelters. And for those that identify as trans, there's also the difficulty of going to a shelter that that honors their gender and where they feel safe. Many shelters still work under the premise of you'll be housed based on what's on your birth certificate, what's on your ID, what your biological gender is. So for a lot of trans women, they feel much safer staying on the streets as opposed to staying in a men's shelter. And we do have some wonderful services in this community, like Pride Lines, that does offer support, and also the Alliance for LGBTQ Youth, but this is very small compared to the needs of what we need for, mental health and support in the community. There really is a lack of education as far as destigmatization of these identities in young people. Really working with the community at large and families to be more accepting of our LGBTQ youth, I think would contribute to a reduction in the amount of homelessness that we experience, and in turn, a reduction in the amount of individuals that are survivors of trafficking.
Lily, it's often criticized, the law enforcement is often criticized for basically arresting the wrong side, if you will, when it comes to prostitution, when it comes to cleaning up the streets. Would you like to address that?
Yeah, I'm used to being beat up. It's important that I get beat up, meaning the profession of law enforcement. It really is, and we need to encourage it because it keeps law enforcement clean, and going in the right direction, and having the sensitivity that's needed to understand the depths of the issue. And so what you're saying, that sometimes instead of the perpetrator, I guess, getting targeted, the victim is usually the one that's getting re-victimized when they encounter the police. So with my department, one of the things that we began doing just prior to my retirement as well is we do have a specialized area now that deals with human trafficking. And there's more training being given to the officers in this regard to recognize if something doesn't seem right about, say, a crime that we responded to that doesn't seem like it's just your usual robbery, so to speak, or your usual theft or strong arm robbery or what have you. Because in a lot of cases, aside from when you talk about the labor part of it and the exploitation with the labor, the perpetrator also uses them to commit crimes, to make money. They use them to commit robberies, rob people of money and jewelry or what have you to make money in that way. And so the officers are now, I know specifically in my department, being trained to recognize if this person that we're responding to is being looked at as a burglar or a robber, that perhaps there may be something deeper going on. If we have, say, a female, I remember one year I was working, it was probably about 2 years ago, it was during the holiday, and this white young female, she robbed like 3 people down Biscayne Boulevard. And not only did she did an armed robbery, they were all armed robberies, and then she carjacked a van to, in Broward, sorry, to commit these robberies. I apologize. I meant to turn it off. And that's unusual for women to do that. And then we kind of saw this uptick in that. And so we notified our human trafficking area to look further into it. And they're trained to identify certain signs and to figure out a way sensitively to get that person to maybe talk and to maybe be open to getting out of this predicament that they're in, and maybe being open to leading the officer to the perpetrator, back to the perpetrator. So we are equipping ourselves better with knowledge and resources to recognize that a lot of times what may be looked at as a criminal is really a victim of human trafficking. One thing I want to say too in regards to our youth and the vulnerability of our youth in the community, and particularly which would be the gay youth, gay community, the transgender youth who are being abandoned by their families, who are out there on the street with nowhere to go. And so they're more vulnerable to a perpetrator pulling up alongside them while, say, they're out homeless on the street at night and they have nowhere to go, they have nothing to eat, and a perpetrator approaching them and saying, hey, I got a better life for you. They're more vulnerable to that. And we have to show ourselves, those of us that know better, and where we're in a better place to help society, we have to show ourselves as how do we truly, in this country, in America, help the weak amongst us. That's what we really have to reach out to really show ourselves as, to me, what America is truly supposed to be about, regardless of what the current government may or may not say. I won't even go there.
That was the last workshop.
I was there.
Yeah, I know, that's why. Jacqueline, but of course.
Yeah. I don't know, it's just something that kind of rattles around my brain, but I mean, do you ever see the Miami Police Department, kind of spackling the chip on their shoulder in and working with people that they are picking up that are first-time offenders, and instead of arresting them and giving them a record, which is going to make it 10 times harder for them to find work, because even if we do have really great survivor programs, a lot of times people can't get jobs because they have a record, and they have a record for what they have a record for. So that's this thing that everything gets dragged with them for the rest of their lives, and I feel like there's so many cases where they pick up a youth for doing this, and instead of arresting them, fingerprinting them, putting them behind bars with adults, and all of this, actually having a program where they're just where you do have your specialized team members that kind of can pull them to the side and be like, listen, we want to talk to you, we want to see what's going on, we want to see where, what happened and why are you here right now, because this is going to be, and even though they're young, they're old souls, because what they've gone through compared to what the most of us have ever gone through, it's 10 times more in age than them. It's just giving them that option to say, hey, you've got two choices right now. We can either try to take this path and get some help, and we'll do our very best to do everything that we can for you, or you're going to keep down this path, and you know what's going to happen, because you've got friends that have been doing this for years, and the people that you work for, it's just I don't see society getting over itself and being okay and opening their eyes, because you describe it as a silent crime, but for someone who just chooses just to look around, it's screaming everywhere. Where I live, I see sex workers on the street. I don't know their background. I don't know if they're doing it because they want to or if they're being forced into it. So for me, it doesn't feel like a silent crime. It just feels like society, yeah, whatever. I don't want to pick the tomatoes, so I don't care who does it. It's a silenced crime. that to me feels a little bit more like appropriate. But I mean, seriously, I think a program like that would be great. I know I've been in the Northeast, I think maybe it was Maine, to deal with the huge heroin problem that they had there. Instead of just arresting people and throwing them behind bars, they started like getting people in rehab programs. And it made such a huge difference, even just in the first year that the program was working. And I could see that being something that could help knock us down from number 3, you know, it's like to really make an impact in it. And I wonder if you ever see the police department kind of just being like, you know, we're gonna approach this with compassion and empathy and you know.
Well, that brings back my point. One thing, when I said it's a silent crime, meaning exactly what you're saying, that if the community isn't saying anything about it and is not being engaged in policing their own community, then there's a silence about it. Now, that's two-folded because I also put responsibility on law enforcement to do that outreach to the community to rebuild trust. Because a lot of times the community doesn't talk to the police because they just flat out don't trust the police. And it's for a lot of the reasons that you're talking about. That they don't feel safe. They feel like if I commit a crime or I do something where I made a mistake, I'm going to be put in jail. I'm not going to have sensitivity from law enforcement. I don't feel safe, in other words. What they figure that's supposed to be there to serve and protect me. So those are all legitimate things that I get, and that's part of why I started my nonprofit called the Community Policing Project. So it boils down to the community engagement, and I'm willing to do my part to share my knowledge to help organize the community, to be more empowered to make these changes that you're talking about. So let's address that. So these programs that you're talking about, first of all, when law enforcement is called to respond to a crime, and if it's involving a juvenile, so to speak, in most cases they are required to arrest. However, the programs you're talking about would then exist in the court system that would determine this is a first-time offender. We're not going to put it on their record. We're going to allow them to go through a program so that, like you said, they don't have that on their record. The police, in a lot of instances, the police are not in a position to say, we're not going to arrest you, say, for example, I don't know if you're referring to misdemeanor crimes, or you're referring to...
No, I mean, just like if they pick a youth up at a club or something that's there, you know, doing sex work, or, I mean, specifically what I'm talking about is sex work. I don't know a lot about, farm working and stuff like that. I know more about that, so I don't really...
So it's something relating to, like, the sex trafficking?
Yeah, just for me specifically, because like I said, I don't know a lot about the other parts, so...
Well, in that instance, the police is in the position, and I can speak on, for example, my police department, that yes, there is definitely a sense now in the police department to not put the person that's clearly possibly a victim in jail. And so we have our sex, our sexual abuse unit that would deal with that we would call out. So the police officer that may respond to that initially, they're being trained. Instead of arresting that person, this person might be a victim of something that it may appear to be a crime that they're doing, but that's not what's really happening. So we're training the officers to alert to that and call the expert in at that point.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like partnering with something like Camillus or, you know, something like that.
Can you say real quick? So a couple, my name's Freddie Rodriguez, I'm a filmmaker. And a couple years ago, just real quick about that, is I was doing a video for United Way. We were featuring different programs, and there was one called And My Kids. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it, where we, and what we did was we were profiling and my kids, and there was a case like that where a juvenile was a young Haitian kid, really bright, was going to a private school. He didn't have any shoes to wear to school, so he stole a pair of shoes, and he got caught. And he got into he was kicked out onto the street by his family, and then he started breaking into houses. He was arrested breaking into a house, and he did get into a program at AMI Kids, and they recognized that this kid was kind of brilliant, and they didn't want him to go down that path, and there was an intervention, and we interviewed him, and I met him personally. He was brilliant, but he had an unfortunate circumstance.
So that is being, to answer your question more directly, that is being encouraged, and not only encouraged, but there is training that is being put forth. I can speak specifically about the Miami Police Department, and I know that other departments are trying to take that route, because the human trafficking issue is nationwide, and especially when it comes to the youth, like in those situations that we're talking about, we have to say, particularly as law enforcement, there's something not right here. It's not just that they're committed, that where it's appearing that they're committing a sex crime. There's something deeper going on here, and we have to have the expert training within our department and train our uniformed officers to alert to that there's something not right here, so that intervention can happen. I had that situation happen to me a couple times on the street, where I have done, I've always my whole career done what I call boots to the ground police work, where I would get out my car, do walking beats, get to know the residents in the different areas, and so they would talk to me, and they would tell me things, right? I built that trust with them. So I had one of the residents call me one day and said, I was a lieutenant at this point, Lieutenant Harris, there's something strange going on in this house next door to me. And I've been noticing over the past few months that there's several young black female teenagers, there's about 10 of them living in this one house. And there's a particular older lady who seems to be like overseeing them, so to speak. And so I made note of that, and of course made my officers aware of that and told them keep an eye out, document whatever you see, etc. So then, sooner than later, these girls started committing crimes in the community. And so from that point I said there's something going on here that's where it's appearing like what you said, that there's crimes being committed, there's something deeper going on. Well, now that my department then had already developed our human trafficking area, I called on them to look into it and to address it, versus going in and saying, let's just arrest everybody for what appeared to be the usual crime. But for them to look into it, to see if there may be some human trafficking going on here, sex trafficking going on here.
And that's where, like I said, the partnership with, like, Camillus. So you do the initial intervention, but then you also, like, provide the, like, resources that they'll need. There's post-traumatic stress. I mean, if they're doing sex work, when's the last time they were tested?
Well, something that has happened in the last 2 years, I want to say, is in the state of Florida that we do actually work with the state attorney's office, and they now consider anyone under the age of 18 that they cannot consent. So they cannot consider them, criminals in that sense. They cannot charge them with prostitution because they cannot consent to it. So in those circumstances, those young people are covered. But I lost my train of thought. But we do have individuals that are over the age of 18 that are well, adults just over the age of 18 that do get charged with prostitution. They get they go and they raid places where they know that sex work is taking place, and they do charge them, but then they give them the option. Either we charge you and you go to jail and you end up with these charges on your record, or you give us the names of your clients and who you're working with, and then you can come to our program, my program. And many of the times, these cases are treated as human trafficking cases, but when in fact, they are people who are doing survival sex work. So they're not being trafficked, but these numbers are being counted towards human trafficking. And they're individuals who were doing this out of their own will, but they're now being forced either to go to this program or you go to jail and you end up with charges. So I end up working with a lot of these individuals, knowing that they weren't being abused or coerced. Sometimes they were working in groups with other individuals to protect each other, so they wouldn't have to work under pimps that would have coercive methods or take their money. But they end up in situations where there are raids, their life is criminalized. So kind of to bring it to the point of how I think you were saying, Maine, that instead of just sending them to jail or charging them for drug offenses, that they are helping them go through rehab. Well, kind of like an alternative to that, and it's kind of a controversial way to go down, but the decriminalization of consensual sex work would open the doors for people who want to support themselves in that way to do so safely. They do not have to fear arrest or records. That way, if they do want to partake in the more traditional economy or work, they could without having records that would keep them from getting hired.
Alina, can you elaborate a little bit more of what that looks like? Is it a local, is it a federal law? What would it take to overturn it? What is public opinion? Elaborate more on that possibility.
Well, I'm not an attorney or a criminal justice person, so I can't...
But you're on the ground. You're on the ground dealing with these individuals, so
well,
what's
yeah,
your
I mean,
perception?
I can't really speak to like how that would be put in place, but I can speak to the benefits of what that would do. There have been a lot of the individuals that I've worked with who are doing consensual sex work, but they came across clients that were either violent or coercive, and even if someone is doing consensual sex work, they can still be raped under circumstances where they decide to say no, but they couldn't seek justice for themselves because they could not go to the police saying this individual raped me once they explained the situations that they were in. So even for individuals that are partaking in consensual sex work, it can be very dangerous, especially when it's street level survival sex work. There are some individuals that have the privilege in working in safer, more commercial sex work, such as doing fetish work or kink work, or they have websites where they can screen clients and they provide more protection to them. But these are individuals who may have other options as far as earning income, but they choose to do this. Survival sex workers are individuals who they have to do this to survive, that they do not have other options. And a lot of it does come down to minimum wage versus living wage. I have a lot of clients who say, I cannot go to a fast food place, get a job with my record, and even if I do, I cannot survive. I cannot raise my kids, I cannot pay my bills. So sex work becomes something that allows them to be able to pay their bills and survive, well, more than just survive, to thrive. So, it's looking at these, these structures. It's more than just human trafficking. It's how it connects also to individuals being put into situations where they have to engage in this kind of work to be able to live, because we don't have jobs that provide livable wages. We don't offer opportunities to people who do have criminal records. And we don't open the doors to individuals like transgender and gender non-conforming individuals who are often very discriminated against in work. And so what do they tend to do to survive? Sex work. So it's beyond just this. So, you know, speaking about decriminalization would touch on all of this, and it would be easier to identify individuals who are truly being trafficked, because we wouldn't be incarcerating or taking time or using resources on individuals who are doing this out of their own desire and with their own consent.
Great question. Obviously, we're very in-depth in this. Just a couple of points. Like you were saying, you know, in 2010, we passed that legislation. Federally as well, under 18 and under are not considered certain terms people used to use. Child prostitution, that's not a term that gets used anymore. You're a trafficked person. So federally and by the state, you would have to deem anybody under the age of 18 a trafficked person. As far as where we can go, as far as programs, in the west coast of Florida, there was an agency in the county, just to leave confidential at this time, that did a similar program where they gave them the option for rehabilitation of some kind. And it was a project that I began to become part of, but declined after a while because it broke a lot of confidentiality and empowerment-based opportunities that I thought were necessary for that program. What we found is these type of programs, the way that they were set up, again, kind of forced an ultimatum for survivors. Either go to jail or do this rehab program and go to this program and this and this and this. Trafficking survivors, and I try not to call them victims, I try to call them survivors because they are surviving currently and they're surviving their situation. Oftentimes do not identify. They do not come off as I am a victim of something. And I'm sure if you've ever watched someone on the street and you try to approach them or you tell them that they're a victim, they're like, no, I want to do this. You know, I'm doing this because that's my boyfriend, I love him, I'm there for him, I'll do whatever I need to for him, this is how we are, this is how we survive. So first we need to kind of look at a survivor and help them understand that they are being a victim of a crime themselves. And I think speaking on the law enforcement aspect, again, I think it really definitely comes to training. One thing that is important, and I think for everyone here today is to recognize, is that there has been legislation, and I'm sorry I don't have the statute number right now off the top of my head, it's just something that came to my mind when you discussed it, about helping those who have been identified through the criminal justice system and the legal system as survivors of trafficking to wipe out their record. So, because the problem has always been, I can't get a job because I have felonies for prostitution, felonies for theft, etc., etc. It's hard for me to get a job. They have been trying for years to pass legislation to swipe those records clean for those people. Is it a perfect fit? No. It should be able to be available for anybody coming from this type of lifestyle, but it's a step forward. And I think something we as a collective might be able to do is look into these legislative, statutes and see how we as individuals can promote that to our representatives and to our Congress and to really say to them, we need this to change. I know that Senator Sessions said that this was a topic that he was very passionate about when he was being questioned. I'm not going to say whether or not he will be true to that promise, but I think moving forward, we really need to speak to those people who are passing our laws and our statutes and our legislation and really push for those changes. So that might be a step for us to think about. How can we decriminalize? How can we create laws that say you're a survivor, you're a victim, we need to give you that opportunity to rebuild your life, and let's remove all of these criminal records that you have. Again, that's a difficult path to go down, but I think the more people who are voicing their opinions and saying, no, this isn't right, the better that is. And I think speaking to the decriminalizing of prostitution, I think it's something that we should consider, and I think a lot of times we're looking at the Sweden model, and that might be an area for people to kind of take a look at and explore the Sweden model where they legalized prostitution and made medical care and health care available. And I think the way that it's been structured federally and by the state is developing it as a business. So either you're self-employed or you work for an enterprise or something like that, and then there's taxations and that sort of thing that happens. I can't say personally that I know all of these things work or not, but as an advocate and someone who looks to empower survivors, my first and foremost important aspect of my job is to make sure that whoever I am serving feels that their options are made readily available to them, and making sure they're making the choices that they want to make, not what I think they should be making. And I think that's the key, most important part to providing proper, any kind of advocacy, is listening to what they want, not what we think that they should be having at that time. And a lot of times that means going to a center, like Camille's house, is that? Going there, speaking with somebody, speaking with the counselor, finding out their options, and them saying, I really don't want to be here right now, I'm going back out there. And they may come 4 or 5 times before they finally decide, this isn't where I want to be, I want to get help. Because leaving is a process, and leaving, the moment they decide, I am going to leave, they have put themselves in the most dangerous situation, because they now have to leave everything that they know and start something new with the possibility of being retaliated against. And I think that's why the work that you guys do is so important, because it is about empowering that individual.
I have a funny question. So in what way is Senator Sessions passionate about human trafficking?
No.
I'm not putting you on the spot.
I'm simply saying, he stated in, but the question was asked by one of the senators about his stance on the issue of human trafficking. And his statement, and I'm paraphrasing, was that this is an epidemic that is happening in our country. I want to make this on the forefront of the issues that we combat. So whether he means that,
or if that's the only time he talked about it.
But the thing is this, so let's be clear, and this is why it's so critical, that no matter who is in office, it's critical that we the people stay engaged. That's the key point, right? Because what that statement means is saying nothing about combating human trafficking. It's saying nothing about that human trafficking is modern day slavery. That wasn't said in that statement. What was said is, it's an epidemic, it's going to be at the forefront of my platform or whatever it was. What does that mean? And that's why it's for votes. That's why it's important that what you just did, in asking questions and holding your public servants accountable, we have to always do that. It doesn't matter who's in office. Because the fact of the matter is, if we don't stay engaged, those of us who think we're safe, one day it's this group, the next day it could be you. One day you may think this group is enslaved, the next day you're enslaved. So that's why it's important that we all, no matter where we're at in society, what level economically we're at, especially, particularly if we're on a high level economically, or if we're on a high level, say, in my case, in law enforcement and police work, that's when those of us that are on those levels, we have to be humble. We have to humble ourselves and say, but the weak amongst us, how well are we taking care of and addressing the weak amongst us? And how well are we making clear statements, not these vague statements that are saying nothing, that are not putting, that's not vilifying modern day slavery. You know, there should be clear statements that say, we are against that. That's not said in that statement. And so it's so critical as we the people and as community members, as the residents, to stay engaged and put, like you said, ensure that your leaders are enforcing this legislation, or that you're creating certain legislation that may not be in existence, like what you're talking about. That's in the people's control. That's in the people's power. It doesn't matter who is in office.
What kind of question? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to reframe certain words that have been used just as a form of empowerment. A lot of people in the work, they don't use the term prostitution because it has a negative connotation as a sex worker. And to speak, I love how you're really addressing the need for, supporting. I don't want to use the term weak communities because I'm in the LGBT community. We're vulnerable, but we're not weak. We are strong. Because there are definitely vulnerabilities amongst these communities that can make us targets, but we need to not use terminology that puts us, continues to show or equate us with helplessness. Same thing, like using survivor over victim. And these individuals I work with are anything but. They are amazing and resilient survivors. So reminding them of how amazing they are and how capable they are is a huge part of their healing.
Alina, tell us a little bit more about the services that are available at Canoas. Tell us about the great work you're doing and the areas that could use some improvement.
Well, I want to honor the fact that this gentleman had a question for a little bit, so go ahead.
No, I just had a question. I was in Lewiston, and I was at a gas station, and I saw a bus of migrant workers, and they were all, to me, they looked obviously underage, working in the fields. And I guess my concern was, what got me really curious was, I didn't know if they were undocumented or if they had been trafficked. What I thought was interesting was that most farms in Florida, farms are businesses. So aren't these businesses monitored, or how does human trafficking, how does people working against their will in farms, how does that take place in legitimate businesses? That's a very odd.
Keep in mind that there are legitimate businesses that have their documents and their paperwork, dot their T's, cross their T's, dot their I's. When you're looking at very rural areas, how often when you drive through a rural area do you see people paying much attention to what's around them? Not very often. It's a small knit community, people know each other. You take people for their word. And oftentimes, and again, I only speak from the experience that I have had working with people and understanding their stories, it's very easy for me as Sally Smith, living in Arcadia, to keep my trafficked people working in the fields, and someone asks me a question saying, yeah, I just hired some help for the day. I had a lot of work, it's really hot, and we gotta really get some plowing done, or whatever the case may be. And so I found them down the street, and they were waiting to make some money today, and so that's what I did. Okay, good. People aren't very focused or very mindful or aware of their surroundings oftentimes. And it's right in front of you every day. And how often have we driven through areas where we've seen lines of people working in a field and we just pass by and we don't say anything? We do it every single day. How many of you are wearing Nike shoes today? Nike is notoriously known for using child labor. Obviously from other countries, but still it's something that they do. If you eat Hershey chocolate, child labor, anything from the cocoa plantations. There's a system that happens with a lot of these larger farming agricultural communities where they're bought out by other companies that get from them. So you'll have a major corporation that Tropicana will buy oranges from a particular area of Florida. And it's a very large plantation. There's a lot of workers. It's very easy to manipulate documentation. It's very easy to say, I only have 50 workers, and then you show up one day as the inspector to notice that there's not 50, but maybe 70 workers, or 100 workers or so. Now again, you have to consider that not everyone is very honest. Traffickers are not known for being, sweet, honest, hardworking people. They may be hardworking, but I wouldn't call them honest.
Who are the traffickers? What's their makeup? Who's doing this?
In all honesty, a trafficker can be anybody. There is no particular one person. Similarly, when I talk about the idea of domestic violence or intimate partner violence, anytime you have one person who wants to have power and control over another person. And it's used through force, fraud, or coercion. And it really, it doesn't, there is no real one face. I know things like the movie Taken have these, these mafias from Albania.
With the farm workers, is it like a Hispanic on Hispanic crime? Is it
oftentimes,
Hispanic?
Well, oftentimes the traffickers will recruit or manipulate from their own communities. So it wouldn't be uncommon to find, and I'm giving this just this one example, if you're from a particular city in Guatemala, your trafficker is more than likely going to be someone who's from the area, who's familiar with it, because it's easier to coerce somebody if I speak the language, if I know the area, and if I can identify with the person that I'm trying to victimize. So if I'm, coming up to you and I'm from your, you've seen my face around here a while, and I'm friends with your cousin from, down the street. I've already made a connection that made that person feel safe with me. So it can happen that way, or it could just simply happen, if we're talking about sex trafficking. If you think about the idea, and I know it's a little dated by some millennial statuses, but Facebook. Young kids really don't know how to privatize their Facebook, or their Twitter, or their Snapchat, or whatever it is they use. So a trafficker really just needs to go on there and type in one of your local high schools, Miami High School. I'm just going to make up one, Miami High School. And all they have to do is look at the profiles. And of course, young girls are, very impressionable, and, they will take pictures, make themselves look really cute. And all they have to do is click on the picture, print it out, and a lot of times I just have to follow what it is that you're doing. If you're on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and you and your girlfriends are going to the local, movie theater to see a movie, all I need to do is show up. I see your picture, there you are. If it's not me, I'll send my 18-year-old or my good-looking young whoever to come on over, talk to you. Oh, you're going to see the movie? So am I. I connect with that person, I make them feel important, and then eventually I can begin that grooming process. So labor trafficking looks a little bit different than sex trafficking, but the same idea of being able to find ways to identify with the person that you're trying to victimize. You look for those key targets. If we're talking about the just simple, coming over a border, I have something you want. You want to get over the border, I'll get you there, here's the exchange. So there has to be some kind of connection of that sort. But a trafficker can be anybody.
Yeah, that in the case of the example I gave you, where one of the neighbors called, and the perpetrator was a female. So it's no real well, I guess there is a stereotype, but it's not necessarily reality. It can be anybody, somebody you may least expect. And then sometimes, in certain cases, you may just not know, because it's very hidden. That's why I call it the silent crime. It's like it's intertwined into things that you would never expect. There's human trafficking going on here in this situation. It's very, in a lot of instances, it's very well hidden, very deep rooted. And so it takes, even for the officers that are the uniformed officers that are usually the first ones on the scene of a crime, so to speak, that there's this training going on now for them to at least pick up on certain things that may just not, there's something not right about this. And then to call in the experts within the police department that are specifically assigned to the human trafficking area. It's very deeply rooted, and that's why I said in the beginning that we have to be careful as to how we handle this human trafficking, this notion of, not just notion, but reality of human trafficking, because it spills over into other areas in society. So it's important that we all address it. If we see something that just doesn't smell right, that we say something.
Lily, let me ask you a question on that, sorry. You talk about police training and reacting, obviously, on a local level. I'm curious if you believe or if you know, are there some municipalities, talking just South Florida, that have higher issues of human trafficking? And if so, is the training following along with that or not? Specifically, I mean, if let's say Miami Beach or Coral Gables has a bigger issue with domestic help being human trafficked, is the police training catching up to that or not?
Yeah, it is. The training is. In fact, the training has become a mandate for our state certification. It's a part of some of the training that we have to do to maintain our state certification. And as far as whether it's happening more in Miami Beach or in Miami, I think it's probably equally spread out. This is South Florida has a serious problem with it. And so I have to say that while I was still there and prior to leaving, that I was glad to see the really heavy training that was coming into place with this issue, because it's a very serious issue.
Well, I wanted to make 2 comments on this last one. That something that's really helpful in addition to police training is educating the actual community that is at risk or vulnerable. I did a project over in Immokalee where they have a lot of people who do pick tomatoes, and something that they did over there is the locals, since they have a lot of people from Haiti, Guatemala, Central America, and they all speak many different languages. Just in Guatemala alone, there's like 26 different indigenous languages. So something that they all did together as a community to try to educate and inform other farm workers was they were able to get a radio station, and they, I think they would run 24 hours a day, and they had different people communicating in different languages, informing the farm workers of their rights. So even if they were undocumented, they knew when they were being exploited. They knew under what circumstances they could go to the police or what wasn't allowed. Because again, if they're coming from other countries, they don't know necessarily what are their rights in this country. And I had another point to make. Oh, that traffickers, there is no specific look to a trafficker, but there is some commonalities in the survivors. A lot of survivors, I want to say about 80 to 90%, if they're survivors as adults, they've experienced childhood sexual assault or trauma. So that is a commonality that we've found. So once someone is victimized, they're more likely to be victimized again. So that's something that, if it's happening in foster care or in their homes or in their communities, that they're more likely to be victimized as adults. So making sure that, again, we have services to address children that have been abused, to educate communities on spotting abuse and stopping it and providing support for them. That's also an important component of stopping this from continuing.
So you were talking about the grooming process, how people are kind of led into it, and so it seems like there was like 2 so far, which was one, there's a grooming situation, and the other one is we have LGBT youth, which kind of chooses it, but it's kind of like this kind of spinning door where they're kind of stuck in it. I was wondering if there's ever a situation where people are kind of human trafficked, but they're abducted and stuck in a situation.
That's one thing that came to mind when we were talking earlier, that yes, people who are more vulnerable would be more susceptible, where say they're in a situation where they've been put out of the house because of their sexuality, or if they're transgender and they're rejected by society, their family, etc., they would tend to be more vulnerable to that. However, you have situations where people could be abducted. Women, so to speak, can just be abducted and drugged, and then drugged into a human trafficking situation. Yes, that happens.
Certainly with young children as well. A lot of times you may find that there are children who have been kidnapped or abducted and they go missing for some time, and we oftentimes talk about in the movement, I say the movement, being those who are involved in the anti-trafficking movement, a period of time where the fear is that if they are not found by a certain period of time, that we do fear that there is the higher possibility that they have fallen into some kind of sexual abuse, sex trafficking. It's not exclusive to just that. I mean, there are many different variables, drug abuse, etc. moving on. But one thing I can certainly say is abduction is something that can happen here in the United States. We can see young women or young men, because a lot of times we're not speaking about young men who are being trafficked, who are runaways or leaving their home, and then someone makes them a promise, and then they're just completely taken away to a completely different place. The old idea of what human trafficking used to look like would be that you would have to be taken from one particular area and taken very far, far away, and be moved around all the time. And what we have found through statutes and just through general knowledge is that it's no longer about the generic sense of I'm going to take you from this one area and I'm bringing you to Croatia, and then I'm moving you to Japan and this and that. It can be very localized, and in my experience working with survivors, we would see oftentimes that they would run a circuit through Florida. So one weekend you're in Miami, the next you're in Orlando, then you go over to Sarasota, down to Naples. Craigslist and Backpages is a big opportunity to have where traffickers will sell these individuals, where they will have a picture that is either blurry. Most of the time if it's a blurry photo, it means that they're underage. If there's a picture, it will seem as though it's the individual saying, hey, I'm available tonight. The term 100 roses is code for $100. I can meet you in Sarasota, Tampa, or Orlando. And so there's just this overlying, since whoever will respond first, John will respond and say, hey, I'm over in Orlando. So that victim may be in Tampa hanging out, waiting for a response, and the trafficker says, okay, we're going to Orlando, and drive you over to Orlando. And oftentimes you do see that these individuals are a lot of times those who have gone missing. So something that's very big, at least with the Florida Coalition Against Human Trafficking, is they do, an organization I've volunteered with for some time, is they do look into those missing children posters. They do look into working with the National Center for Missing Children to see how we can connect those services together and see, are they maybe at a shelter? Can we see if maybe we can kind of locate them? And there have been some successes where we have, they have been able to locate young people who have come up through either a raid or just finding them on the streets, doing sex survival work. And these are just realities that are here, especially in South Florida.
We have time for 2 more questions.
First, I want to thank you all for being here. I've learned a lot so far. I really appreciate that. I've never considered labor trafficking to be human trafficking. I only thought in my mind that it was strictly sex trafficking, so thank you for educating me on that. But I wanted to hear more about the empowerment piece and what we can do as a community. Here at Pride Lines, we've catered to the LGBTQ youth individuals in Miami since 1982, and now we have a larger center, obviously, and we're catering to the larger community as a whole. We have a lot of programs that we offer here as well. For homeless youth, we take care of them, we get them showers, we get them clothes, we get them food, and also work on getting them housing. So we do a lot here, but there's a lot more that we can do. So what I would love is for you to tell me, what can we do? What more can we do?
Well, I first want to say everything that you are doing is really fantastic, because especially with LGBTQ youth, so many times when they do run away or they are kicked out of their homes, what they're looking for is a place to find love and acceptance. So if they have that in their community through a community center, a case manager, a counselor, a peer advisor, a youth group, they're less likely to go looking for it on the street from older individuals who can exploit them. So offering them these spaces and the opportunities to receive services. So they do have food, they do have housing, they are being taken care of, means that they don't have to engage in either risky situations like survivor sex work, which is still risky even if they're choosing to engage in that, or to engage in that and then put themselves at risk for coercive and being trafficked. What I would add is, really a really important focus in the work is highlighting what healthy relationships mean. Healthy relationships and consent. Bodily autonomy is so important in this work because so many of the survivors lose the concept of they are in charge of their bodies and their thoughts and their decisions. And so helping young people understand that they are in charge of themselves, they decide what is safe and what is not safe, showing them examples of healthy relationships helps them see those red flags. Because the people who tend to traffic do have certain things about them. They are very charming, they are very manipulative, and they use that to start the grooming process. So when young people have healthy relationships modeled around them, if they have healthy relationships with adults, positive influences, they're less likely to fall into those traps.
Thank you.
Yeah, because the perpetrator is going to prey on the low self-esteem. So it's important that, and God bless Pride Lines, by the way.
Thank you.
It's a perfect example and model for helping our youth. And so with that, I'm looking forward to working on the Pride Lines with the Community Policing Project and partnering with you all on doing some training with the community and providing training on community organizing and community empowerment. And then with the youth, to have what I would call life skill type training, where it includes training on building their self-esteem, anti-bullying training, because unfortunately this whole bullying issue is a part of the breakdown of the self-esteem. And when our youth feel downtrodden about who they are, or rejected about who they are, it just feeds into that what can make them more vulnerable and susceptible to these types of conditions. So it's important that we're feeding them with things that build up their self-esteem, that shows them it's important what they think about themselves, and that's where it starts, and to combat this whole bullying issue as well. By again feeding into them the strength to know how to recognize something that doesn't feel right, something that doesn't seem right, And so if it appears and it shows up, they'll have the tools and the knowledge and the skills and abilities to combat that from within.
Can I just bring up one thing just real quick? Just because it sat with me so yucky earlier when you guys were talking about when I brought up like offering an option instead of arresting them, and the option that they have is you can either narc or go to jail. And if you really are being trafficked, you've been arrested by an organization that you don't trust. Like, I don't trust the police because of the couple of interactions that I've had with them regarding traffic issues, because I drive a scooter. I've been bullied, intimidated, and threatened by my police department over traffic infractions. If I am being arrested with a group of other people who could easily say, oh, she's the one that told, you know, like, I don't know if it makes me like a humanitarian to just think that I'm not gonna, like, those are kind of crappy options. And like, in my bleeding heart world, that wouldn't be it. Like, I would be like, you know what? If you want to enter into this program, get some help, and like, give them something to trust before just demanding that they, like you said, they're never more in danger ever than when they walk away. And that's what breaks my heart with this, is that we're not really giving them an option. We're saying we're going to put you in a crap ton of danger, either by leaving or you're going to go to jail. Like, it just doesn't seem like it's a choice, but frig, who the hell wants to make that choice? I know I would want to make that choice. I don't think anyone in this room would want to make that choice, and it just seems like there's got to be a better way, and the only way that I can see is decriminalize consensual sex work, and then we can actually address the issue of human trafficking. Because until the other part of it is decriminalized, you're going to have this swirling mix of, are these numbers right? Are these statistics right? Is this person really being trafficked, or do they just not want to go to jail? Like that's like dealing with the root of the problem, is just by getting rid of the stuff at the top.
And I think that really speaks to my point, again, my final point that I'll make, and this, everything you guys have said has been phenomenal, and the work that Pride Lines does is phenomenal. I think the most important aspect to seeing positive and practical and proactive change is empowerment. And I think empowering you to decide with what information you have today, what next steps do you, as a citizen of this world, want to do to combat this issue. You've just become aware of some information about what human trafficking looks like. You now have the power to rally with your peers and make a decision to say, what do we want to see change as well? And obviously, I don't think anybody on this panel would say that that's not something we could ever, turn away from. And I think, again, one thing as a community we can definitely do is first and foremost look at legislation. I think for me as an advocate, one of my frustrations has always been the fact that I'm not seeing anything actually change. But change comes first from within and then within my community. And I think we really need to begin speaking to our representatives, our Congress, to anybody who is willing to listen and say, we need to make this change. And if right now on your platform it is to decriminalize, then what is our next steps? What is it as a community? What can we do? And then finally, just looking at empowerment, simply saying, we need to show empathy to survivors and let them know that they do matter. And letting them be the ones who lead their own journey and make their own choices. Whether it's positive or negative, it's them and their growth and their journey, and we have to be there to support them regardless of what they choose. Last bit, 2 numbers. The National Human Trafficking Hotline. If you see something that seems a little weird or you're not sure, you can always call them. They will put you in touch with your local law enforcement. Let law enforcement do the nitty-gritty work. Going out on the street and trying to rescue someone off the street is very dangerous for you and the survivor. But calling and making a report If something's still not happening, keep calling and keep reporting. Your local domestic violence centers are also good avenues to help survivors to reach out for some.
I'd like to thank each and every one of you. Linda. Director of Guidelines, thank you very much, and Amanda, all the way.